So the first thing we're going to be talking about is the history of linen. Last episode or of our previous episode, we talked about flax, and we're doing this to talk about the root of fibers and where they came from, not the secondhand fabric store, which you should be shopping at, but fibers in general. So when we look at linen across the board, there is one group of people that we have to study because they perfected linen. And I give you a little guess, one, two, three, it's the Egyptians. The Egyptians perfected. When I say perfected linen, they perfected linen. And let's talk about why. Because some people think that, or studies will show you, some people believe it, don't study fashion or textiles in general, that linen was used as a mummification process. So it helped preserve the bodies, which it did. But the Egyptians as a whole viewed linen as something that was magical. They felt like it had all of these different properties because and when they used linen, linen was money. Linen was an asset to them. This is the tradable goods that they had. So they used linen for bandages, for wrappings, and for clothing. And the way we can tell this, and the way that we know this, besides historians knowing this, is when we look at the tombs that Egypt, we look at the tombs from pharaohs in Egypt. The tombs is where we can find these things that were preserved in textiles. I think around they had one tomb and around 85% of the thousands of fabrics was linen. So from that, you can tell how these Egyptians valued linen and the weight that it held in them. Because, as we know, as some may not know, Egyptians believed that you could take your things to the afterlife with you. So they believed that once you died, if your material possessions, excuse me, were not around you, you could not have it in the afterlife. So, with us knowing that and going to a tomb and seeing 85% of the fabric being linen, it tells you the weight that linen carried for them. And also, when we refer to the Egyptians perfecting linen, is that linen has different stages. If you listen to the previous episode, we talk about how flax has different stages. Linen does the same thing the same way, and they were able to capture that, know that, and then use linen for its different properties. So, like we said, linen wasn't just used for the mummification process. It was almost like a, besides of course being money, the the priest was essentially anointed before they could even touch this linen. So they had sacred linen, and essentially what a priest had to do, the process of mummification. Well, besides when they get in there, the textile and embalming and all that type of stuff, which the Egyptians also perfected. They were the first ones to do embalming, all that type of jazz. So essentially, a priest before he can go into this special room to wrap the mummy in this linen, because it was a special room, it was a side room, he had to shave, he had to wash himself, and he essentially had to clean himself in order to use this linen, in order to operate this linen. And that's why we say that Egyptians really perfected linen. And it's really because they saw it as magical. So they treated it with the utmost care. So that's going to be our textile tea. Next episode, we are going to go into silk and ancient trade within China, how silk was discovered. There is a old myth, the old wise tale that we will get into. And if you do ever want to follow along, this book that I am referring back to, that, like I said last episode, I tend to read it, listen to it, dive back into it at the top of the year. I like to use my year as like basics to like get down to the roots and reassociate myself with the roots of certain industries. And of course, I'm in the textile industry. So I do this. It's called The Golden Thread. So if you do want to listen to the book and you want to learn a little bit more based off what I just said, because what I said was a really quick synopsis of linen and the history of linen, um, read the book.